many of you are aware that Saint Valentine is actually a real person? You know that? A bunch of you. Fantastic. Well, then you can tell me if I'm telling the truth or not. But from what I understand, not only was he a real person, but he was a priest in Rome during the rule of Claudius II, so which is right around the 200s AD. And so the story goes is that Claudius II was a very, very vicious guy, and he had all these campaigns where he was always looking for warriors, and he couldn't get enough soldiers. And so he cancels marriage. Like, have you ever thought about canceling Christmas for your kids? You threaten that, but like canceling marriage, right? He cancels marriage thinking, if I can just get these guys, like if they're not getting married, what else are they going to do? They're going to come fight for me. Well, it backfires because St. Valentine secretly keeps marrying couples. But then one day he gets apprehended, and then executed on, can you guess what day? Wasn't a trick question. February 14th, yes, and that's why we celebrate Valentine's Day. A little history for you, so it is rooted in a little bit of accuracy, but now it's definitely snowballed to a whole nother proportion. Do you know what people spend annually on Valentine's Day? $13 billion around the globe. So I read one report. I don't know whether this is true or not, but it said that the average couple spends $200 on Valentine's Day. If we spend $200 on Valentine's Day, we would probably kill each other. So that's just not going to happen. We love each other, but we do have limits apparently. So as you get older, that's what happens. That's a lot of cash. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about money this series. We're talking about these 3 truths that will set us free financially in this series called Mine. Right? And it makes us a little bit squirmy, and we talk about money and things like that. But at the same time, it's one of the biggest anxieties and biggest weights that we carry. Because many of us, we've had the spiritual reconciliation, and we've had the, hey, I found my way back to God moment, but then somehow we've never had this other reconciliation. We never let God into the finance department. But last week we said we don't just want to have a spiritual reconciliation, we want to have a financial one as well. Because our relationship with Jesus isn't just about, hey, he's just one of the drawers of my life, he's just one of the compartments. We're saying, no, when we say we're a Christ follower, we're saying he is into every area of my life. And so he came to set us free of all of it. So that's what we're going to dive into today. And that first truth we embraced, where we challenge each other to embrace, was this: all I have has come my way by the loving hand of God. Meaning it's not really my money, it's all his. And because it's all his, I give him my best. Because he graciously lets me have some of it, most of it, right? And so we don't give him our leftovers, we give him our best. So today we're going to be talking about the second truth. And really it's circling around what I'm going to call a landmine. All right? So let's see if you've ever stepped on this landmine. Check out this video.
If you're happy and you know it, swipe your card. If you're happy and you know it, swipe your card. If you're happy and you know it, then your wallet surely shows it. If you're happy and you know it, swipe your card. If you're sad and you know it, swipe your card. If you're thirsty and you know it, swipe your card. If you're bored on the town, turn your frown upside down. If you're broke and you know it, swipe your card. If you're lazy and you know it, add to cart. If you're guilty and you know it, get 5 more. If you're stressed and you know it, then your debt will surely show it. If you're hapless and you know it, buy more stuff. If you're human and you know it, then you're just about to blow it. If you're human and you know it, spend the money that you just don't have.
It's the American dream, isn't it? We all love to spend, right? But I'm sure you're already familiar with some of these stats on what happens when you spend too much, right? You go into debt. You spend money you don't have. And so let me give you some updated stats here, just in case you have been living under a rock or frozen in this Arctic tundra called Chicagoland. The New York Times recently reported that global debt is now up to $57 trillion. Our slice of the pie as Americans, our national debt is $18 trillion. And don't worry, while you're sitting here, it's growing by about $50,000. So don't worry, just It's tax season, breathe easy. And oh, yeah, by the way, if we were to divide up that debt over the course of all U.S. citizens, that would be approximately $57,000 a citizen. Don't forget to pay your taxes. And the average student loan debt is almost $33,000 with gusts to 60 or $100,000, depending on how much education you're going to go and after there. So kids, study hard, get good grades, get a scholarship. Gonna get an amen from the parents. All right. The average credit card debt is over $15,000 in American households. And 1 out of 3 people only has this. What is an emergency fund? You know, that thing you're supposed to have when your car blows up or your refrigerator breaks or you need new tires or whatever it is. And I get it, like, life happens sometimes. I'm not talking about that. Like, sometimes medical things happen and, you know, that's a different story and I feel sorry and I'm sad for those things. But for most of us, that's not why we're in the financial situation we're in. That's not why we're in debt. We're in debt because we want it now and we want to pay for it someday, right? With an interest rate of around 21%, right? And so we settle on, we got to have it now. Instant gratification, it feels so good. Well, we're going to look at a church that was also struggling with this idea of wanting it now, paying for it later, if you will. Because what that does is it stirs up what kind of feelings and emotions in you? Anxiety, stress. You might even fought on it on your way here because you're just like, oh, it's the money series, you know? And so this produces this blood pressure and this level of anxiety and things. And so this church that Paul is writing to, it's the church of Philippi. It's modern day Greece, or in the Bible you may see it in the book of Acts, Macedonia, or in some of Paul's letters. And in this church is a church that they have given this very, very generous gift to Paul. Their pastor, he's going around planting churches, but they're a little bit anxious about their own financial predicament. And it's Philippians chapter 4, verse 11. We'll start there. And it says this. He's going to give us some insights on how to get rid of this anxiety. I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I've learned to be content whatever the circumstance. Contentment. That's not a very popular word. People don't use that for their password on their, Wi-Fi or things like that, although you could because no one would guess it. It's not my password in case you were wondering. But the idea of contentment, we get it, we know it. But think about it in Paul's terms. The word contentment in his day was very, very significant because there was all these Greek Stoic philosophers. And see, the word in Greek for contentment is actually self-sufficiency. See, that was the apex. That was the epitome of what all these Greek philosophers were telling people to strive for. If you can just be self-sufficient, self-reliant, if you can just produce your own wealth, if you can just take care of your own needs, then you're in control of your own destiny, right? You're in control. It's okay. So when life goes up and down, you don't have to worry about the circumstances. You can be content because you make it happen. So Paul pushes back, and we're going to see in a second here. Because that's not what true contentment is at all. So here's the first truth we're going to unpack. It says, I must learn to live joyfully within God's current provision for my life. That's what he says contentment is learning to live joyfully within God's contentment for my life. And so here's the provision that I'm going to draw us here. I know you guys love my artwork, okay? So here it is. God's provision kind of looks like this throughout the course of our life, okay? It goes up, it goes down, there's good seasons, there's raises, sometimes you get fired, sometimes you get an inheritance, sometimes you get a tax return, sometimes you get audited. Like whatever it is, there's ups and downs to it. Paul says whatever it is, I can be content in that. But then what happens though when we're not content in God's provision level for us, we spend, right? And that leads us to debt. Not a trick question. Debt. Okay, so this is a little more interactive here. In debt, what we put in red because, the words of Jesus are in red, and red is what we're going to do. So, and debt, what we're saying with debt is I'm going to go above and beyond what God has provided for me. Bill Hybels says it this way about debt. He says, debt is wanting more than God's current provision for my life and arranging another way of getting it for myself. Let's say it together because you guys seem a little sluggish. Okay, say it together. Debt is wanting more than God's current provision for my life and arranging another way of getting it for myself. God, I know this is what normal people need for their provision, but, This is me we're talking about. You must have my provision level. Maybe you misfired. I know, this house right here, but we're over here. And, we're from New Jersey, so we need more, God. You love us. And so, we'll just help you out until you catch on. And so we'll just go a little bit above what I need, God. Yeah, it feels so good up here. This is what I want to live. That's comfortable. The air's even better. It's awesome. This is great. But then the bottom falls out, doesn't it? It's not reality. We know this. It feels so good to spend, spend, spend. But here's what Proverbs says. It says, the borrower is slave to the lender. And while it feels so good, what Scripture tells us is that you're actually enslaved. You see, throughout the Old Testament and New Testament both, every time there is a master to a slave, it means they own you. You're enslaved. And we're only supposed to have one master. And it's Jesus. And we know that, but it just feels so good. It doesn't really feel like enslavement. Yes, it does. Tell me that when the bill comes, and the next one, and the next one. You feel enslaved, don't you? I do. Jamie Munson, in the book Money, God, or Gift, says this: despite the warning, the temptation to spend is so strong that many of us close the shackles around our own wrists. There it is again. I'm enslaved. I don't want to be enslaved, but I have to have it. I don't want to be content. We know it, but we don't do it. Here's the good news. This isn't going to be all depressing. Don't worry. It's not what God wants for us, okay? Paul goes on to write in Philippians verses 12 and 13. He says, I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content. Oh, good. In any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Paul, if you don't know the history of him, he was doing very, very well as a religious leader for the Jewish people. He was in the upper echelon of society. He got invited to all the parties. He had, the really fancy horses and all that stuff. And he was living the dream, we might say. Up and down, up and down. But then he becomes a Christ follower. He starts spreading God's word everywhere. And Paul, when he's writing this letter, do you know where he is? He's in jail. He's been there 2 years. This time he's just house arrest, most scholars believe. Some have argued. But eventually we know he writes other letters when he's in the maritime prison there in Rome, where he is literally chained against the wall like this, having to write and then come back like that. So he's still in prison, though. He's not free to go wherever he wants. And he's writing this letter. And Paul, throughout his life, it goes up, it goes down. He has plenty. He has food to eat. Other times he's starving. Sometimes he's shipwrecked. Other times he's glad to be alive. Sometimes he's cold and naked. Other times he's warmed by the fire. Whatever the circumstance, he is content. Why? Because he says, God gives me the strength. In every situation, God makes me content. And the contentment is not an easy thing. I actually read one study that University of Stanford put out, and this professor, he specialized in sociology and in behavioral influences. How do you like that title? Behavioral influences. Tell your people, what do you do for a living? I'm into behavioral influences, okay? And he said he studied that, especially in small, confined spaces like airplanes, trains, things like that, when the person next to you, like you don't even have a desire for it, when the person next to you buys a movie or orders something like a drink or food, you are 30% more likely to go, I want that. And he says, not just there, it's everywhere. A total stranger can have this kind of power over us. He says it's running around. We don't like to be content. Even a stranger can make us go, I want more. Right? And that's what's at this. We don't want to live in God's provision. We want more. And we know we shouldn't, but just a little more. But I just get a little bit more, then I'll be content. If I just get a little bit more money, if I just get a little bit further in my job, if my kids just do a little bit more, then I'll be content. But Paul says that's not what the secret is. He says it's not rooted in material wealth or in yourself. He says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Another modern way to say that might be, I have strength for everything from the one who makes everything. And so here's what real contentment is. True contentment is not self-sufficiency, but it's God-dependency. Let's say it together. True contentment is not self-sufficiency, but God-dependency. If you're taking notes, write that down. If you're not, write that down. This is going to help you, all right? Jot it down on your phone, take a picture. We don't like to be dependent on anybody, right? It's hard to admit we need help. It's hard to say that I am going to commit to living within God's parameters, God's provision for my life. I don't want to be dependent. I want to do it myself. I make myself. I'm my own self-made man. This is what I want to do. The Scripture makes it clear time and time again, like in Deuteronomy 8. You may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. But remember, the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth. Gives you life to breathe, gives you ability, gives you skills. All those things. It's just easier to swipe the card, get more stuff, right? And just pretend the debt won't catch us, but it does. It's hard to be content. So how do we live in a God-centered way with money? How do we have a God-centered relationship with money? How do we live in such a way where we can say, okay, whether in plenty or in not, God, I'm going to honor you with money. Are you ready? First one, I could tell. You guys are really excited. All right, here we go. First one, if you want to have a God-centered relationship with money, live in His provision, it may seem obvious, but you have to say the obvious ones, is keep God first. The temptation is, again, to just put God on the back burner often. Like, I'm going to attack my debt. I'm going to do this. But, again, think about it this way. Okay, the reality is we're all going to spend money, right? Here's the other reality. Only God can bless your finances. Not the mortgage company, not the car dealer, not your cell phone provider. Lord knows, not the credit card company, right? Only He can bless your finances. Remember last week we talked about, which idiot do you want to be? We want to be that faith-filled idiot or the one who doesn't have faith? And we said we want to be those faith-filled people who say, God, we trust you. That 90% somehow is going to go further than the 100%. And we're going to have those C stories, and I'm going to share a couple next week of that's happening right now. You guys are telling me stories that God is trusting. Are you trusting God with your finances and things are happening? And we're saying, I'm going to live here, God. So first, you got to keep God first. Matthew 6:33 says, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. All we have comes from Him. So we just have to reinforce the obvious. Keep Him first. He's the one that provides. So when you do that, the second thing is you have an honest assessment. You have an honest conversation with yourself, or maybe your spouse or some good friends. And you have to start deciding, what's the difference in my life here? How am I going to do this? And so you have to make a paradigm shift. And here's the paradigm shift. Are you ready? I'm going to draw a little darker. First service wasn't good. But you're going to have to shift from a wants-based to not just a needs-based, but a priority-based. Can you see this yet? My lines are getting worse. Is it dark enough to see? Back row? Okay. What I mean by that is that our wants list, that's endless, right? Like, I want season tickets to the Bears games, but like, I'm never going to be there because I'm always here, okay? But I want that. Or you want this really nice vacation, or you want that newer car, or you want your kids to play on that traveling team, so you're going to just, you're never going to come to church, and you're always going to do that. You really want those things. The list goes on and on, but then you feel guilty and you feel bad. But if you go on the need-based side of things, right? Well, the list is a little bit shorter, right? What do you really need? What do we really need? We need air, we need food, we need water. You guys are all clothed, thankful for that. So there's a short list of things we really need. And if you just think of it about that, you feel guilty again because you go, man, compared to most of the world, I don't need anything and I can't buy anything. But remember we said we're going to live joyfully within God's provision for our lives. And so we make this shift to priorities. What are the values? What are the priorities in our lives? And then we spend out of that. We plan to spend out of that. We put it here and we say, okay, God, if God is a priority in my life, how do I spend in such a way that reflects that? How do I live in such a way? How do I save in such a way? My family, I want to have a nice home because we love hosting. We love having people there. We're going to host small groups. We're going to reproduce leaders. We're going to reach our neighbors. Fine. Because now that frees you up to be joyful. And you still have to, but when you don't have a priority, your money leaks out all over the place. You're not having an honest conversation with yourself. Proverbs 27 says it this way, be sure you know the condition of your flocks. Give careful attention to your herds. I'm not calling you a bunch of animals. I'm saying you need to do an honest assessment is what the Bible is saying there. Honest assessment means, where is the money really going? Is there anything extra coming in? Do I have any gifts or talents? Can I sell some things to attack some debt or maybe make up some differences? Is there some things going on? Part of the honest assessment for Erica and I, when we were first married, we had to, like most married couples, we came from very different backgrounds. My family a little more, we didn't have as much money, so we saved it a lot. Her family had a little bit more, and they spent a little more freely. And one of the things they spent money freely on was birthday presents to everybody. All 85 cousins within, a 3-mile radius. We spent a little, $20 here, $5, $10 here. We were at a birthday party every week almost. I felt like maybe 2, 3, 4 a week sometimes. And it was just adding hundreds of dollars we were spending on these little kids. And I love them, I bless them, but I was like, man, that's not lining up with our priorities. We could be using that to attack debt. We could use that to go on vacation. We could use that for be generous. There's a lot of things we could do with that. And so the real reason we had to move is because we stopped giving presents to all these little cousins. And they all just, they grew up, they got bigger and stronger, and we had to flee. And so it's hard. Have an honest assessment. What's really important to you? Yes, I love eating out, but really, is that, is going $150 over in your budget? Is that really worth it? Your friends will understand. If they don't, they're not really your friends. Don't be embarrassed. We've had to say it. It hurts. It's weird. Find other ways to hang out. What is it? Where's the money going? Have an honest conversation. And the next one, I already gave you a hint. The other thing you need to do to live within God's provision for your life is the B word. It's budget. Apparently none of you have one. Okay, that's okay. Most Americans don't. We talk about budget. How many times, show of hands, have you made a budget and then not followed it? A lot. Okay, 9:30, man, they were not very honest. So, you guys, extra grace here. Okay, so very blessed. So we don't like it, right? How many, you cheat on it, you know it, but you don't really stick to it. Can you guess the number one cause of divorce in America? It's money. Most people think it's fidelity, but I set you up pretty good for that. So infidelity is number 2, in case you're wondering. And here's the famous saying, you've probably heard this one before, right? We buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't even like. And we call that keeping up with the Joneses. Something in us, right? Just, man, their kid has it. I guess that Xbox. They have to have 2 Xboxes. We get an Xbox or their car and that car. Oh, they're going on vacation. We got to do that. Oh, man, they're eating that way. We got to eat that way. They're going there. We got to go there. And we just get caught up in that cycle. And if we can't do that, then we feel guilt, then we feel shame, we feel really bad. Now we're like operating double time. It feels terrible. Because you know what debt leads to? You know what it stands for? Debt stands for don't even buy that, all right? So just remember that every time you want to go into it. And when it's on sale, what are you supposed to do? No, everybody falls for it. No, that's what most people think. It's on sale, I have to get it. Or I work really hard, I have to have it. But if it's a priority, you save for it. You make it something that you can joyfully then celebrate. Instead of going, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, it's going to come back. Oh, it's going to cause a fight. Oh, we're divorced. It's not worth it. Dave Ramsey says this about a budget. He says a budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. I'm telling you, take notes. Talk about this in your small group. Could change your life. All right, take some notes. Fourth thing then, we know this one is you actually just don't have to do it. You commit to it. You drive a stake in the ground and you say, no more. We're not going to be that family. I'm not going to leave that legacy. I'm not going to put that weight. Even if you're single, this is the time to start. I know some of you're working a couple jobs because you want to, before you even meet Mr. Right or Mrs. Right? Yeah. Okay, you want to be ready. And you know what that's called? When you start running this play. When you start running this play of keeping God first, and then having an honest conversation, honest assessment of your own life, having a budget and committing to it. You know what that's called, this space in between here? Margin. What? Exactly. Margin. What is that? We don't have margin in anything in our lives. Margin on our calendars, margin just to breathe, margin just to be with God, and we don't have margin in our finances. See, but if you prioritize, you create space between what He's providing, what's really valuable, and then this becomes margin. And you know what margin does? Margin plus contentment equals freedom. Peace. Joy. You can celebrate. You know what? You can attack debt. You can get rid of it. You can go and you can You can work on just being, how do we be more generous? You can be responsive to when God nudges you, leads you. You could get crazy. You could start like maybe even paying off your house. You could start doing all kinds of things. It would free you up instead of living in guilt. You could build that emergency fund that only 1 out of 3 Americans has, so you're ready when something happens. You could live joyfully within God's current provision. Don't fall for the trap of, God, you messed up. So here's what happens. Here's what it looks like when we don't trust God. Here, Eric, come on up here. He's going to help me out here. I brought him back a second service. We'll see if he can. We're going to do a third service. Is that okay? No, okay. No, okay. All right, here. So when we don't live within God's provision for our life, let's go with this one. Okay. It's kind of like this. You got that? Yeah. You good? All right. For a while, I mean, no matter how strong you are and how solid you are, you can hold this out here for quite a while, right? But, that choice, that decision wasn't that bad, right? So I can handle it for a while. Our finances can sustain that. But then, we had another one. It's a small purchase. It's not that bad, but now it's getting a little heavier. You breathing still? Okay. You're breathing? Okay. And you're starting to feel a little pressure. Starting to feel a little weight. And then the interest, the payment comes, and the interest accrues a little bit more. It's a little heavier. I'll be back. Okay. All right. And it's what the Bible describes it this way in Hebrews chapter 12. It says, let us throw off everything that hinders, or some versions say, every weight that entangles us or hinders us, and the sin that so easily entangles us. Let us run with perseverance the race marked for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. Yeah, it's a short verse. I'm almost done. And so what happens here is, how free is Eric? He's limited, right? I mean, not only he can't really respond very quickly to things, but he's also susceptible to attacks, right? Like, he's going to beat the snot out of me after this, but he's going to throw these on me. But, the enemy, it can attack you. This is when the marriage stuff happens. This is when the family stuff starts falling apart. And then you, especially if you're a dad, as a guy, there's something in us where you feel like, I got to provide more, I got to do more. And not that moms don't feel that too, but there's something different there. And then together you get at each other, and you, and the weights, and you need someone to come, you ready?
Thank you.
And take some weight off. Become free. You can respond to God's nudgings. You can respond freely to God's leadings. Let's give Eric a hand. Thanks a lot. Thanks, buddy. But when you are under that weight, under that pressure of living, my board is gone, before when you're living above your means, we're not staying within His provision. It's hindering. It's suffocating. And you can't respond when God nudges. Because that's what God wants for us. He wants us to be able to say, I want you to live this life of generosity out of the overflow of your heart. And so right now, some of you may be thinking it's too late. My situation, it's not too late. It's what God specializes in. He specializes, remember, margin plus contentment equals freedom. He wants that for you. He wants that for everybody. So what's the step you need to take? Maybe you never really honored God. You never kept Him first. Every time you kind of default setting. Maybe you've never had that honest assessment. Maybe you've had the budget, but then you always cheat on it. Or maybe you just need to finally drive a stake in the ground today and say, I'm committing to it. I'm going to live within God's provision. I'm going to go home. We're going to sit down. We're going to pray about this. We're going to talk about it. We're not going to fight about it. And we're just going to say, God, okay, here forward. Here's what we're doing. So what I want to do is I want to close in prayer, but you get to keep your eyes open. I know I faked you guys out. Y'all went like this. So we're going to pray this together. I'm going to read it, but I want you just to read it silently to yourself. Look at this beautiful prayer here. It's what we're saying to God in our hearts and minds. So I'm going to read it as you read it silently to yourself. Father, I recognize that all I have comes from you, and I want to live within your provision for my life. Will you please forgive me for making provisions above what you have provided? Will you set me free from the burden and the shame of debt? I commit today to live within your provision. And all God's people said, Amen.